little bit like, like looking out at this just massive ocean, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And you're standing on the shore, and it's just kind of like, whoa, where do I even begin?
Right.
But the thing is, and this is so important, is that everybody who you've ever heard speaking English beautifully and fluently, they all started right where you are.
Yeah.
Feeling like, oh my goodness, there's a lot to do here.
A lot to learn.
And so that is exactly what we are going to be talking about in this deep dive today. We are focusing on first steps in English, and the subtitle is A Guide for International Students.
Exactly. Really focusing on those first steps and really kind of boiling it down to like the most important information
Right.
for somebody who's just beginning that journey.
And we have been looking at a really comprehensive guide. I mean, it covers so much, different types of programs, student experiences, a ton of practical advice. And so we are going to our goal here is to really try to answer those, those questions like, okay, which program is right for me?
Yeah.
Or how do I even begin?
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of like those fundamental questions.
Build a really nice foundation.
Yeah.
So let's talk about why English matters so much. Why it's worth putting the effort in.
Okay, so let's unpack that because, English, it's not just one subject, right?
No.
It's so deeply integrated into like so much.
Oh, yeah.
Whether you're talking about education or careers or even just like making friends around the world. When I think back to, the times I've tried to learn a language, I remember feeling like I was just kind of memorizing a bunch of phrases.
Right.
But I wasn't really understanding what I was saying. I was just kind of like, okay, this is what you say in this situation.
Right. Just repeating.
Yeah.
Rote memorization.
Right, exactly.
And that's really, really common. It can be really discouraging too. But once you start to get those basic structures, that grammar, the basic vocabulary, things start to open up and click.
Right.
Like I'm thinking about movies, textbooks, being able to understand and follow conversation.
Yeah, it's like the code starts to unlock.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's where, picking the right program can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about the language itself, but it's about the learning environment, the focus.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about those different types of programs that are out there.
Yeah. I mean, one of the most common and often most effective types are intensive English programs, IEPs.
Okay.
A lot of times they're located at universities and they are, as the name suggests, super intensive.
It's a deep dive.
Yeah, they're full-time, immersive.
Yep.
You're really jumping in, and our sources say they run anywhere from 6 months to a year, with the goal of taking you from your current level, wherever that is, to a much higher level of proficiency. What's interesting about them is they're really comprehensive. So they'll cover reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So if you're looking to get, a strong grasp of English in a short period of time, an IEP is a great way to do it.
Okay. Now, what about if you are planning to go to a university where, English is the language of instruction?
Right.
Are there specific programs that are good for that?
Yes. These are called academic English programs. Sometimes you'll see them abbreviated as AEIS or EIS.
Okay.
And really, the difference here is that it's focused.
Right.
So while IEPs are kind of more general improvement, academic English is really about the specific skills you need to thrive in a university setting.
So what are we talking about there?
Yeah. So think about what you do as a student.
Right.
You have to write essays that are, really well structured, use the right vocabulary. You're giving presentations, participating in discussions, maybe even some formal debates.
Right.
So these programs will teach you those skills,
Right.
Understanding academic vocabulary,
Right.
interpreting those complex academic texts,
Okay.
building a persuasive argument.
So you're kind of shifting your English into that academic world.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So IEP, broad academic English, university focused. What about language schools?
Yes. Yeah. Private language schools. These can be another really great option.
Right.
One of the biggest advantages is flexibility.
Okay.
So they might have more course schedules, more start dates,
Okay.
more specialized classes.
Right. Okay.
But one thing that's really important, especially if you're planning to come to the U.S. on a student visa, is that the school has to be SEVP certified.
Right.
And that's the Student and Exchange Visitor Program.
Right.
So always check if the school has that certification.
Okay, that's really important.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can't ignore the elephant in the room.
Right.
Online,
Online learning,
all these apps.
all these apps and platforms.
Where do those fit in?
Yeah, they've really changed the game. I mean, you have apps like Duolingo,
Right.
which is a really fun kind of gamified way
Right.
to get started. You build up your vocabulary, get a feel for the grammar,
Right.
and it can make those first steps, like we were talking about, a little less intimidating.
Yeah, you don't feel like you're, jumping into the deep end.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then you have the more structured platforms
Right.
like Coursera, EDX.
Hmm.
A lot of the courses are developed by university professors.
Right.
So it can be a bit more in-depth, a little more academic.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, depending on your learning style and your goals, they can be a great supplement to other programs or even your main way of studying. But, for a truly immersive experience and for visa purposes, in-person programs, still hold a lot of advantages.
Okay, so that's great. I mean, that really lays out, the different kinds of programs that are out there.
Yeah.
But I want to get into what it's actually like to be a student,
Oh, yeah.
Because our sources, I mean, they actually gave us some really nice little stories and anecdotes.
Absolutely. Hearing from students, can be so encouraging and really demystify things for people.
Totally.
We heard about Maria from Brazil, who started in an IEP level 1.
Okay.
And her experience, it really shows just how nervous a lot of students can be.
Right. You can just imagine, like, you arrive in a new country.
Yeah.
And you're surrounded by people who are all speaking a language
Yeah.
that you're still trying to learn.
Absolutely, yeah. She talked about how she felt anxious, a little overwhelmed on her first day.
Mm-hmm.
But what was so interesting is how the instructor, how they adapted their teaching
Right.
to help people like Maria feel more comfortable. She described how the teacher used a lot of visuals, pictures and gestures, almost like a game,
Oh, wow.
to help communicate. And it made it, much less intimidating.
Right.
And much more accessible.
That's such a great example of how, the right teaching method can
Yeah.
really make a big difference.
Yeah.
And it's so encouraging to hear that even with that initial anxiety, she made amazing progress. I mean, 6 months later, she was giving a presentation entirely in English.
Isn't that amazing?
That's fantastic.
It's really incredible. It just goes to show what's possible.
Right.
With some dedication and the right support. But, it's also important to acknowledge that it's not always easy. There are challenges.
Of course.
A lot of students encounter challenges.
Right.
Along the way.
So what are some of those, what are some of the things that, are tricky?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one that comes up a lot is accents.
Oh, yeah?
Just the variety of accents you might encounter.
Right.
English is spoken all over the world.
Right.
And even within a country, you can have really significant regional variations.
Yeah.
And then you have slang, which can feel like a whole other language.
Oh, totally.
But, our sources had some really good advice on how to tackle this.
Okay, good.
One of the things they suggested was to watch, YouTube videos and movies,
Okay.
but with the subtitles on.
Oh, okay.
So you can really connect those sounds to the written words
Oh, that's good.
and improve your comprehension.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it kind of gives you that visual anchor
Yeah.
for what you're hearing.
Hmm.
And another thing is something called shadowing.
Okay.
So this is where you listen to a native speaker
Mm-hmm.
and then you repeat what they're saying,
Right.
trying to mimic, their pronunciation,
Okay.
intonation, rhythm.
Mm.
It might feel a little awkward at first,
Right.
but it's a really, really good way
Yeah.
to train your ear
Yeah.
and improve your own pronunciation.
Yeah, you're really getting into the nuances, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, maybe the most important piece of advice is don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Right.
Our source material really emphasized that you have to accept mistakes.
Yeah.
They're a natural part of the process.
Right.
And it's through those mistakes that you identify areas that you need to work on.
Right.
And you learn and grow. So, don't let that fear of saying something wrong
Right.
stop you from speaking.
Yeah.
Every fluent English speaker has made a ton of mistakes along the way.
So embrace the stumbles.
Yeah.
They're just stepping stones.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's great advice. Now let's talk about, for those international students, especially those who are coming to the U.S., there's that whole visa process.
Right.
Enrolling in a program, it can seem a little overwhelming.
It can, but if we break it down into steps, it feels more manageable.
Okay, great.
So first and foremost, we talked about this earlier, being accepted into a SEVP certified school.
Right.
That's crucial. Without that acceptance letter,
Yeah.
you can't really move forward
Right.
with the process.
Okay.
So once you've got that letter, the next step is paying the I-901 fee.
Okay.
That's a fee that all prospective F1 and M1 visa applicants have to pay.
Okay.
It supports the Student and Exchange Visitor Program,
Right.
and you pay that before you schedule your visa interview.
Okay, so acceptance letter, pay the fee, and then the big one, the interview.
The interview, yeah. You'll schedule an appointment at the U.S. Embassy or consulate
Right.
in your home country.
Mm-hmm.
And during the interview, the officer is really assessing your application. They want to make sure you are genuinely planning to study in the U.S.
Right.
and that you have the means to support yourself financially.
Right, that you're not going to be a burden.
Exactly, yeah. So you'll need to show things like bank statements,
Okay.
financial documentation.
So it's proof of funds, basically.
Proof of funds, yeah, really important.
Okay, so that's the general visa process.
Yeah.
What about once you get to campus? You've made it through.
Yeah.
What are some good tips for settling in?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things is to go to orientation.
Okay.
Almost all universities and language schools will have an orientation for
Right.
their international students.
Right.
And it's a great way to learn about the campus, the resources, and meet other students.
Okay, so orientation. What else?
Conversation clubs,
Oh, yeah.
language exchange programs, these are great for continuing to improve your speaking skills.
Right.
In a relaxed setting
Oh,
and making friends.
yeah.
And then finally, don't hesitate to take advantage of any academic support resources.
Oh, okay.
Like writing centers. They can be really helpful for, academic assignments
Right.
and just refining your skills.
So those are great tips for navigating, kind of the academic life.
Yeah,
But also just, the social life.
absolutely. It's
Yeah.
really about, being proactive,
Right.
seeking out those opportunities to practice,
Yeah.
and utilizing those support systems.
Okay, so we've covered so much.
We have.
I mean, we started with why English matters.
Mm-hmm.
We went through all these different kinds of programs.
Mm-hmm.
We heard Maria's experience. We went through the visa process, and we even talked about settling in.
Yeah.
So let's kind of give our listeners some key takeaways.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, choosing a program that matches your goals,
Right.
whether it's fluency, academic preparation, whatever it is,
Right.
that's crucial. It's
Right.
going to maximize your learning experience.
Right.
Second, embrace the process.
Right.
It's not always going to be easy. There
Right.
will be challenges.
Right.
But those challenges are opportunities to grow.
Right. Right.
And don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone.
Right. Right.
Actively practice. Use English in real situations.
Yeah.
And finally, immerse yourself in the language.
Right.
Watch movies, listen to music, read books, have conversations.
Right. Surround yourself.
Yeah, exactly. The more you engage with it,
Right.
the faster you'll progress.
Okay, so now we want to turn it to you, our listener, for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Think about your own experience learning English, or maybe somebody you know.
Yeah.
What really resonated with you?
Mm-hmm.
Were there any challenges that stood out to you or successes that you thought, oh, that's interesting?
Yeah.
What questions do you still have about those first steps?
Yeah.
We really encourage you to take a moment and think about that.
And it brings us to our final thought.
Okay.
Every expert, every fluent speaker that you've ever heard
Mm-hmm.
was once a beginner.
Right.
So all of the, what we've talked about today is just the first step on a much larger journey.
Right.
So embrace that journey, keep practicing, and most importantly, believe in your ability to learn and grow.
Yeah.
So I want you to consider this.
Okay.
What's one small step that you can take today, right now, to get a little closer to your goals?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
See you next time.